We're now recording that.
And we have 5 seconds of silence already, so we can go ahead and do the sync up in 3, 2, 1. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I
can't get my voice that high.
Yeah.
It's so high.
It's so high.
She's so high, high above me. She's so lovely. That is not the dance jam.
It is not the dance jam. The dance jam is Panic at the Disco.
It is. And we can talk about that later. But for now, we need to talk about the job that we're here to do. Welcome to Fireside Breakdowns. I'm Jon.
And I'm Robin.
On this show, we break down some of the most controversial, complex, and even polarizing topics facing our society. We use honest, good faith analysis backed by research to form our conclusions. We promise to skew our bias toward what can be factually supported and to make it clear when we're giving you our opinion versus speaking about actual research.
We're human. We have blind spots and biases, and they will show up sometimes, but the goal of this show isn't to convince you to see things our way. We want to give everyone a foundational understanding of these complicated topics and present the most truthful information available so that we can discuss and address these issues in a thoughtful and beneficial way.
We talk about some pretty heavy stuff on the show, and we tackle topics that might feel polarizing. But we do that because we have an important goal in mind. We want to change the way people have hard conversations. And we think we can do that using research and discussion to create common understanding. And since you're here, we hope you want the same thing.
So we suggest getting comfortable, maybe having a good drink on hand as we work through this stuff. Welcome to our fireside.
This is not a good drink. This is very, very weak instant coffee.
This is carrot cake rooibos tea. Yeah.
Sounds interesting.
It could use a little, like, I don't know, like brown sugar or molasses or something.
Sugar. Like
the
the brown sugar frosting is what makes a carrot cake good. So
I might even put like just a little bit of molasses in it. Like it just needs something.
Yeah.
But it is good for tea that's named after carrots. Anyway.
Yeah, but carrot cake. I love carrot cake.
Anyway, I also love carrot cake. It's delicious.
Not what this show is about, though.
No. Are you walnuts or no walnuts?
No. Well, team no walnuts generally.
Just
because...
but I won't not eat it if there are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, as we mentioned, the dance jam is Panic at the Disco. Don't threaten me with a good time, because I love that song, and it makes me feel like a much crazier party person than I actually am in real life. So. Okay, well, welcome back to this week's episode of Fireside Breakdowns, in which I forced Jon to play my favorite game show. He's been very busy with work this week, so I took the lead on this episode, and I decided yesterday that I was going to turn this into an episode of Jeopardy, minus the buzzers and any actual money, of course.
Yeah, we would have to have money to spend. Our plan for this episode was to do a little discussion on a few concepts and terms we've seen in the news this week, and they don't often get explained. They're kind of just thrown around, and everyone listening or reading is expected to know what they mean or put it together using context. So we wanted to explain what each one means and give some reference points about why it's important to current events.
Exactly. But then I got to thinking, what was my favorite way to learn new concepts and test my knowledge in school? And that was with a rousing game of Jeopardy. Of course, I dominated the classroom because I am a complete nerd. It is no secret that trivia is my sport of choice. I have a favorite Jeopardy champion, and I always have very strong feelings about contestants' choices during daily doubles. And I'm in charge this week. So, the category is in the news. Why don't you go ahead and choose a question?
I will choose a question. I would also like to point out that pretending that you're not in charge every week is a little bit misleading, ma'am.
Okay, but I was like in charge this week.
That's true.
Like
You were
I was
super
the
in charge this
whole
week.
boss.
The whole boss,
So
the whole enchilada.
the whole
All
enchilada.
right. In the news for 200, please.
Okay. This is an unofficial name for the short legislative period that takes place after midterm elections, but before the new congressional session begins in January.
What is lame duck?
That is correct. The term lame duck goes back to the colonial era when it was used to refer to failing traders and businessmen who were unable to fund their enterprises and pay their shipping costs. They were said to be limping along financially like a wounded duck. Grim, yes.
What?
Yes. Like they're still going, but there's not a whole lot happening there. And then in the 1830s, folks began using it to refer to politicians whose termination date was already established. So like they're still in office, but we know they're on their way out. Now it just kind of seems like an accurate representation of what can generally be accomplished while everyone waits for the clock to wind down on a session.
Yeah, I hadn't actually really thought about the fact that we called it a lame duck. And like, even when you were explaining it, I was like, oh yeah, it's lame duck totally makes sense. But when you explained it, now I'm like, well, how many limping ducks did people see to make it
right?
like, to make it a common enough occurrence that you could reference it? Like, I feel like people have probably seen far more like limping dogs or limping horses or limping cows.
Right? It makes me think like, I mean, because I know that the duck hunting was a kind of a thing, you know, that's one way that they got game. And it just made me think like, oh, their guns were not very accurate. They probably wounded a lot more animals than they killed.
Maybe. Anyway, so in
Anyway.
this year, right now, 2022, from basically right now when this comes out, it will be November 21st to when the new Congress is sworn in early next year. This is basically the last chance for Democrats to try to move policy through while they hold majorities in both the House and the Senate. And it may be difficult to actually get legislation passed after that point next year. Many members of Congress are not present because of holiday commitments, because they happen to be human beings like the rest of us.
Right.
And because of coming changes to the composition of the House, there's much less incentive for Republicans to compromise with Democrats. They can just kind of wait it out, and then they're the party in charge. But Democrats aren't giving up yet. There are a few issues on the list for consideration this session, and they may actually achieve their goals before the year is up.
Right. One of those goals that they have is to pass some essential spending bills. Because Republicans will likely take control of the House in January, Democrats are eager to create robust omnibus spending packages now. They also need to at least broach the subject of raising the debt ceiling, and they must pass the National Defense Authorization Act, which funds national defense spending, which is a lot more complicated than I think I realized. And then, so because they need to pass that one specifically, and because they really do want to raise the debt ceiling, that could result in some conflict and some compromise. We're dealing with lag issues, by the way.
Yeah, clearly. And defense spending, especially right now, is particularly contentious with the ongoing, we'll call it a war in Ukraine, crisis there. So that one, I'm paying some pretty close attention to that. Another thing that they really want to focus on is the Respect for Marriage Act. This legislation, which would provide federal protection for same-sex and interracial marriages, earned the backing of 12 Republican senators, along with the 50 Democrats, and has moved to the next stage of the legislative process, which means that it has to go to the House. Again, compromises were necessary, but it's one step closer to law. This is a big deal and a perfect illustration, actually, of why Democrats haven't been able to put more legislation through, even though they technically controlled both the House and the Senate. If you'll recall, it takes on paper a majority to pass legislation, but it takes 60 senators to get the legislation in front of the Senate for a vote to pass it. So you need those 10 extra people. In this case, it would be 10 Republicans to say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and allow a vote on it. And oftentimes, not always, and it's not super rare either, they'll allow a vote on it, but they're not going to vote for it. So even though on paper you need 50 votes to pass something, in practice you need 60 yeses to get something passed. And I just wanted to hit that again because a lot of people I've seen and talked to, especially in the last 2 years, but even now, have been like, well, the Democrats control everything. Why aren't they passing legislation? It just shows that they can't legislate. They can't be in charge. And It's like, well, no, they still have to compromise with a party that has explicitly stated that they want to obstruct as much as they can.
Exactly. And, when you have smaller majorities, every person carries a lot more weight. I should point out that I said the 50 Democrats. That does include the independent senators. They generally vote in the same block as Democrats. So it is a little bit more convenient to just say the 50 Democrats, but it is Democratic senators and independent senators as well.
Yes.
Another thing that they're hoping to accomplish is reforms to the Electoral Count Act. Congress is considering a list of reforms to the Electoral Count Act that would shore up some of the wiggle room in how federal elections are finalized. So this list of reforms would remove the failed election provision, which basically says if for some reason an election in a state fails, then the governor can submit electors, but it didn't do a very good job of explaining what that failed election criteria would be. And then it also carefully defines what counts as a catastrophic event that would extend an election in a state. It also overtly clarifies that the role of in the electoral process, Okay, I put sentences together. It also overtly clarifies that the role of the vice president in the electoral process is to open the electoral votes so that they can be counted. That's like literally it. He doesn't qualify them. He doesn't vet them. He doesn't reject them. He or she, I should say. And then it also would create a deadline by which the executive or governor of each state must certify their slate of electors. So basically, you have to certify the slate of electors by X date. No questions.
You might be noticing a theme here that all of these were issues that came up a couple years ago. In that vein, it would also make that governor's certificate conclusive in Congress on January 6th, preventing the presentation of false or alternative electors. Basically, once you approve it, it's done. Case closed. You're not going to, anything else is not applicable. Plus, the reforms create an expedited, judicial review process in case a bad faith governor submits electors that counter the popular vote. And as we head into the 2024 election, clearly this is important and we need to get these reforms through.
Yes, this one's going to be really interesting to see it get through. There's a House version and there's a Senate version, and they differ on a few things, but these are the things that they both have in common. So hopefully we can see those get taken care of before the end of the year, especially as we welcome more far-right folks to the House of Representatives who would probably oppose putting some of these things in place. They are also hoping to pass more aid for Ukraine, get more funding to fight COVID-19, and renew some expiring tax provisions.
Just some small stuff.
Just some small stuff to get knocked out between now and Christmas.
Yeah. And really, because of the holidays, because of everything that's going on, I wouldn't be surprised if practically that meant they had somewhere in the vicinity of like 14 days to actually vote and get this stuff done. 14 to 21, somewhere in there. Just because some senators are going to be gone for certain periods of time that will overlap with others, and it's not like they won't be in session, but there just won't be enough to have cloture. Anyway, wonk stuff. They don't have many days left, no matter how many weeks or how many actual days are on the calendar.
Yeah.
We'll see.
They get better than bankers' hours.
Well, they do sometimes. I will say a lot of Congress goes in, sure, at like 9, sometimes 10 o'clock, but they're often there until 9 or 10 o'clock too. So
that's fair.
Again, I mean, some of them aren't. Not all of them are saints, but it's not as cushy as it seems.
That's fair. That is fair. Okay, my turn. My question. I will take in the news for $400.
Set by Congress, this dollar figure limits the amount of money the Treasury Department may spend to honor financial commitments previously made by Congress and the President.
Be-do-do-do.
Robin.
What is the debt ceiling?
That is correct. We wanted to talk about the debt ceiling this week because it's coming up so frequently in the same context as lame duck, and because we're creeping closer and closer to it as each day passes. So here's what you need to know about the debt ceiling. The Constitution grants Congress the sole authority to borrow on behalf of the United States. And they used to exercise that authority by passing legislation that allowed borrowing for specific purposes and by mandating details like acceptable interest rates, maturities, and the types of financial instruments used. As the United States began taking on more debt, Congress started giving the Treasury Secretary more freedom. Laws passed to finance the costs of World War I established the first combined debt limit, or debt ceiling, to cover some spending needs. By 1941, the debt ceiling concept as we know it today had been fully enacted.
Right. Okay. And so despite sounding like a limit on the amount of money that the US can borrow, the debt ceiling actually doesn't affect federal spending or the amount of debt that we incur. Instead, it limits how much debt the Treasury can honor. Essentially, if we make financial commitments beyond the debt ceiling, and then Congress doesn't raise the limit so that the Treasury can honor them, then we'll default on those commitments. Currently, that limit is at $31.4 trillion. That's a lot of dollars. Right. And we do need to raise that. When the debt limit is reached, the Treasury Secretary is authorized to use what they call extraordinary measures to create some breathing room and to continue regular operations while also avoiding defaulting on our debt. So these measures include spending some of the cash that we keep on hand, temporarily suspending investment of federal employee retirement contributions, and then disinvesting securities held by federal employee retirement accounts. These measures are then all reversed once the debt ceiling is increased, but they are allowed to do those things to keep us afloat.
Here's the thing. Analysts had projected that we'd run out of money to pay the bills in late summer 2023, based on the list of commitments that had been made at the time. However, program and policy changes, like an extension of the federal student loan repayment freeze and higher interest rates on the debt we already owe, could increase spending and decrease the amount of revenue the government brings in. If we do enter a recession in early 2023, that would increase automatic spending on safety net programs and move us toward that ceiling faster than anticipated. How much faster? Analysts aren't sure yet, and they say they won't know until the Congressional Budget Office releases its updated baseline forecast in January. Losing the ability to honor financial commitments on a national level is a really big deal. I know that probably sounds patronizing, and that's not how we mean it. It's just that we'd never really considered the downstream and potentially long-lasting effects before. The US has never defaulted on its debt. Never. And the absolute certainty the nation would never fail to honor its outstanding bonds, the so-called full faith and credit of the US, underpins global financial markets. US Treasury bonds are considered among the safest investments on earth. Defaulting on our debts would likely cause interest rate increases throughout the world. Investors would demand higher rates on future Treasury bonds, which means higher cost for taxpayers, and there would be ripple effects throughout the United States and global financial systems.
So why doesn't Congress just increase the debt ceiling now if we know that we're going to run out of money? Well, the answer to that is politics, of course. Initially, the Biden administration had hoped to see legislation pass to raise the ceiling during this lame duck session. But now that Republicans know that they have the majority coming into the next session, they are much less willing to compromise to get an increase passed. Because again, we're not going to run out of money before January. We're going to run out of money probably early in the summer or in the midsummer. So they have a little bit of time, and they don't feel the urgency to compromise and get something taken care of. Instead, they seem to be planning to use this as leverage to get a little bit more of what they want once Congress is back in session in January. There also doesn't seem to be much hope of moving an increase through the Senate as part of the reconciliation process, which they have been able to do before, because they need 50 votes to move it through, and Senator Joe Manchin is likely to oppose the effort. And then there could also be other defectors. He just really is enjoying his role as spoilsport for the Democratic agenda in the United States Senate.
Yeah.
So likely they will just have to wait until next year and do the best to get the result that they need.
Yeah, that makes me very nervous, though, because Republicans have explicitly said that they will hold the debt ceiling hostage in order to force cuts to things like Social Security.
Yes.
And what was the other thing? Was it Medicare?
It was a safety net program,
Yeah.
that takes care of people who can't take care of themselves. No big deal.
Yeah. So basically, because Republicans, for some reason, have always been anti, quote unquote, handout, which Social Security, by the way, is not. It's money that you have paid into a system and that is being returned to you with the interest that it has earned.
Yes.
Because of that, they are using this very rare, frankly, opportunity to threaten to not raise the debt ceiling and get what they want in the form of reductions of those benefits, which is wild to me. This is
right. Let's just hold the global economy in our hands so that old people don't get any more money. Like what?
The way, yeah. This is, to me, it's a lot like holding a grenade and threatening to let it go if somebody doesn't let you, I don't know, have a drink. It's just like, it doesn't make any sense. You're going to get what you want, or you're going to blow everything up. And I mean, like, you heard the impact of it. You're going to this won't just affect the United States. It will literally have impacts around the world. At this point in time, might crash the global economy and plunge the entire world into a recession or depression, and while they're doing it, ruin the United States credit rating, basically make it impossible or make it much harder for the United States to be viewed as a reliable partner in yet another way, because this is something that has been happening to the United States over the course of the past 6 years. It's that our cachet with the world leaders has been eroding because the previous administration and its actors have done so much to to damage the world's faith in the United States. And
Yes.
that is directly going to impact everybody on the globe, and especially your pocketbooks.
100%. And it is worth pointing out that the folks who are most likely to take this kind of hold the budget hostage approach tend to be further on the conservative side. They are a little bit more to the right. And this approach could actually really backfire on them, much in the same way that this election denial party narrative backfired on them in the midterms. So, because taking this kind of action will inevitably cost the United States taxpayer, and because it is kind of a political stunt, if they do this very publicly at the beginning of the next congressional session, they do risk basically pissing off most of America. That's like, listen, the government cannot default on our debt, so just pass the freaking thing and don't hold it hostage. It's like, most of America understands that that's a very unreasonable position to take and a very unreasonable thing to use as a bargaining chip. So if they do decide to do that, I'm not going to say hopefully they'll be very careful. I actually hope that they completely tank it and everybody sees how ridiculous their behavior is and it completely backfires on them. But that is also a possibility.
It is definitely, to me, this is not executing your responsibilities as a representative of the people appropriately. This is not it. You are risking the people that you are supposed to represent. You are risking their livelihoods and lives to do something that most of them don't even want in the first place. Because lest our politicians forget, they don't just represent the people of the party that elected them.
Yep.
So let us move on to the next question. It is mine now.
Yes,
I will take in the news for 600.
All right. On November 17, 2022, Nancy Pelosi announced that after her term expires in this position, she will not seek re-election for a party leadership role.
Beep, beep. What is the House?
Yes, but you do need to wait for me to call on you. Otherwise.
Well, there's only me, Robin.
Listen, I don't make the rules. Alex
True.
Trebek made the rules.
It's true. So that means there will no longer be any rules for Jeopardy. It is just a free-for-all, a madhouse.
I don't know, man. Maya Bialka's doing a pretty darn good job. She's no Trebek, but she's doing a good job. Yeah, so we included this one here, not because we don't think that people know that the Speaker of the House is an important position or, what they do, but because we don't think that it's been made clear how the composition of the House and the other leadership roles will affect the way that the incoming Speaker actually executes on their responsibilities. After every election, every 2 years, Democrats and Republicans huddle together in a process called caucusing to choose their party leadership in the House for that term. Folks who are interested in the positions begin campaigning amongst their party members very soon after the election, and then elections are conducted by secret ballot, generally within a couple of weeks. The Democratic caucus will vote, I think, on the 30th. The Republicans have already done theirs.
Yeah. So for the majority party, which is this time the Republicans, those leadership roles are the majority leader. The majority leader is second in command to the Speaker of the House. They schedule legislation to be considered on the House floor, organize daily, weekly, and yearly legislative plans, consult with members to understand how party members feel about issues, work to advance the goals of the party just generally. For the incoming House, this will be Steve Scalise, who supported the Texas lawsuit asking the Supreme Court to intervene in the election and objected to the certification of Biden electors from Arizona and Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also have the majority whip. Whips are responsible for assisting the party leadership in bringing the party's bills to the House floor, maintaining communication between the leadership of the party and its members, counting votes on key legislation, and then maybe most importantly, persuading members to vote for the party position. They whip up support. That is actually where that came from. Tom Emmer was elected into this role in a fierce and contentious race, which feels really weird to say, but he is also a part of that hyper-conservative Republican group.
You know, I wouldn't be surprised, knowing how some of the phrases that we use get, birthed into this world, if at some point in history, the majority whip literally used a whip.
Yeah.
And then finally, there's the caucus or conference chair. And this is the House Republican Conference serves as the organizational forum to elect party leaders at the outset of each new Congress. So every time we elect a new Congress, the House Republican Conference is the one who they elect the Republican leaders, right? The conference meets on a weekly basis to discuss party policy, pending legislative issues, and other matters of mutual concern. And the chair presides over those meetings. Elise Stefanik, who is a proud Trump 2024 supporter, was chosen for another term in this role.
Right. And then traditionally, this list of majority party leadership will also include the Speaker of the House. The textbook definition of the Speaker's role includes administering the oath of office to members of the U.S. House of Representatives, giving members permission to speak on the House floor, counting and declaring all votes, appointing majority members to committees, sending bills to committees, and signing bills and resolutions that pass in the House. The Speaker is also in line behind the Vice President to take office if both the President and the VP are incapacitated. And then the Speaker continues to serve the residents of his or her district and has all of the duties of the other members of the House, except for serving on committees and participating in floor debates.
Yes. However, there's more to the role than just what's on the box. The Speaker of the House is the most visible and authoritative spokesperson for the majority party, and the role has become increasingly partisan since Newt Gingrich assumed the position after the 1994 elections. So Gingrich oversaw the implementation of massive rule changes, which he leveraged unashamedly to his party's advantage, and set the hyper-partisan and aggressive tone that has carried through the role for almost 30 years.
That's a long time.
Long.
Well, each party nominates a candidate for Speaker of the House. The position is elected with a simple majority vote. So generally that means that the party with a majority will win that seat. But since it's a position that's voted on by all members of the House, it is not guaranteed that the majority party's candidate will win.
Yeah. House Republicans have already chosen Kevin McCarthy as their nominee, who in the past has been closely aligned with Trump, but doesn't seem to be extreme enough to carry the support of the most right-wing members. There are concerns that he would be unable to unite the party as they try to advance an agenda and prepare for the 2024 election. The Republican majority is small enough that each party member wields almost outsized power over a piece of legislation's success. If it doesn't satisfy everyone, it's likely not going to get far. And that adds another layer of pressure to the Speaker as they try to make committee assignments and manage business on the floor. Here's the thing. Just like Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema could uphold things in the Senate if they weren't appeased, pretty much, I mean, it is going to be very similar to that in the House. I think they have 222. I think it's 222 to like 214 or something like that.
I think that's where we are currently.
Which is very, very narrow. Now, in the Senate, it sucked for the Democrats, but it was okay because they pretty much knew that it was either going to be Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema, or usually it was both, because neither one of them wanted to be the one who axed a piece of legislation, because that would draw political ire down upon them. In the House, there are a much wider array of people who could spoil any particular piece of legislation now. And when it only takes 4 or so, roughly, whoever is Speaker of the House is going to have an incredibly, incredibly difficult job. And now,
yes. I mean, McCarthy,
I have a prediction.
It was actually, oh, what's your prediction?
It's okay. I know that things are crazy. I have a prediction that the people who spent the last, well, probably decades, 20 years, insisting that Nancy Pelosi was incompetent or drunk or not very good whenever she was Speaker. I think she was Speaker before, whatever. Are about to learn just how good she really was. Because Kevin McCarthy, if he wins, is no Nancy Pelosi.
It's very true. And it was a pretty contested election as far as like Speaker nominee goes. Usually everyone kind of agrees on who should be the boss and they get on board, but there was another much further right candidate for the role, and that candidate actually drew something like 33, 35 votes from the Republican conference. So even if you think that those 33 people are going to be the ones that hold up your legislation, if it's not right-wing enough for them, if it's not conservative enough for them, I mean, that is enough for the Republican Party to tank its own agenda with this kind of split. So I don't know, man.
Yeah. So Kevin McCarthy is almost guaranteed to have to work pretty closely with Democrats to get anything passed. And I would be surprised if we see much more than a handful of pieces of legislation pass through the House on a party line basis at this point.
Yeah, it's really going to be an interesting session.
Honestly, I think I'll be surprised if we see like one pass through on a party line basis at this point. Because if he goes so far right that he's going to alienate, that he's going to appease the extremists, there are a lot of moderates in the Republicans, just like there are a lot of moderates in the Democrats, that just won't go for it, and they'll tank it. And the same way, if he appeases the moderates, the extremists, because they're so extreme, they'll tank it. There's a much larger gulf between the moderate, at least my perception is there's much wider gulf between the moderate Republicans and the extreme Republicans than there is between the moderate Democrats and the extreme Democrats.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. And my prediction is that we will see just a lot more moderate legislation come out of this Congress than most people on that side of the fence were hoping for. That everyone was looking forward to the opportunity to really advance the agenda. And I don't think that they're going to get that done.
Especially because the Democrats are going to hold the Senate. And every piece of legislation that they write will pretty much have to go through the Senate. So, I mean, it'll have to. So, and it's not just, there's a very good possibility that not only will it have to go through the Senate, but that it will have to overcome the Democratic 51 seat majority in the Senate.
Yeah.
So they'll have to pull 2 senators to make it over, to pass the legislation through the Senate to get to the White House.
Yeah.
That is going to be stiff.
It's going to be very stiff. But honestly, I think that we may see more legislation that represents the average American come out of this Congress than we have in a very long time.
Oh, I agree.
Because
I agree. If there's going to be
the moderate bloc,
it would be more moderate.
Yeah. Yeah. It will represent a bulk of American voters, I think, more so than what we've seen in a long time. So not necessarily a bad thing.
No, not at all.
You know
Or
what
at
else is
least it
not a
has the
bad thing?
potential. Yes, tell me. What else? What else is not a bad thing?
FiresideBreakdowns.com is a great thing. It is our website. And on that website, you can find every episode of our podcast. You can find show notes for the researched episodes of our podcast. You can find links to our socials, and you can also find links to the most popular platforms on which you can consume our podcast, including YouTube. And you will also find a link to our Patreon account so that if you enjoy this podcast and listening to us play Jeopardy, you could kick $1 or 2 our way and help us buy a cup of coffee or have something to bargain with during Final Jeopardy. You know. Are you ready for some good news?
I'm ready for some good news.
The good news is Attorney General Merrick Garland has appointed special counsel to oversee the criminal investigations into former President Trump. Yay! He chose Jack Smith, former leader of the Justice Department's Public Integrity Unit. Smith has been prosecuting criminal cases, including politically charged corruption cases, for almost 30 years. He worked in the Office of the Prosecutor at the International Criminal Court at The Hague from 2008 to 2010, and then again more recently, and oversaw cases against foreign government officials and militia members accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. His colleagues have described Smith as meticulous and modest, which is the opposite of the man that is being investigated, and exactly what we need in this situation, if you ask me.
I agree. Now, listeners, you may be asking, okay, but why is this in the good news section? And I'll tell you, because this isn't just any old potential criminal case or two here. We're talking about potentially bringing a case against not just the former president of the United States, but one who is particularly prone to casting anyone who doesn't give him what he wants as being an opponent or enemy and likely politically motivated. Trump's enemies are either always liberals or Democrats or rhinos, which, if nobody's ever explained that to you, means Republican in name only, which is hilarious. And that has let Liz Cheney has been described as a rhino by his particular base, which is the craziest thing I think anybody has ever said. Anyway, yeah. So because of these grievances of his, this has led to the perception that our institutions are actively working against Trump, and therefore anything that these institutions, do cannot be trusted. So if Merrick Garland, who was appointed by President Biden as Attorney General in 2021, were to be the one who is solely responsible for deciding whether or not to charge Trump with a crime, it would almost certainly be immediately dismissed as a politically motivated accusation or trial, whatever. I mean, even with the appointment of the special counsel, Trump and his base will say that, but at least it will be a harder claim to actually make. It won't stop them from making it, but it'll be harder. Ish.
Right. Mr. Smith comes with a particularly unassailable background as a hard-nosed but fair prosecutor. Letting a special counsel lead the investigation means that the general public, those of us who will allow facts to speak for themselves, and we mean all of the facts, not just the facts that we cherry pick because they validate our feelings. We made a whole podcast because of it. Can have more faith in whatever the outcome of these investigations are. Of course, Trump immediately said that the appointment was unfair, that this was an attempt to do bad things to him specifically, and that somehow this was also a politically motivated decision by the egregiously corrupt Biden administration. Right. Which strikes me as an intentional attempt to tie Mr. Smith to President Biden directly in an attempt to erode public confidence in the appointment. Solid tactic, but I don't think it's going to work this time. The reality is that the White House had absolutely nothing to do with this decision.
Ironically, a lot of people on the left are also upset about this.
Oh.
To them, It feels like Mr. Garland is delaying the administration of richly deserved justice. Justice. This seems like it will just slow things down even further. As someone with a master's in criminal justice, who served as federal law enforcement and who really just likes to nerd out on legal podcasts and essays and stuff, allow me to give you something to chew on if you are one of these people. Appointing a special counsel is, in legal terms, a big fucking deal. It's right there in the paper. The term extraordinary gets thrown around a lot in these situations because it is, in fact, extraordinary. And maybe because so much of the last decade has legitimately been extraordinary, the word seems to have lost some meaning, but this really is a big deal. So nothing could be further from the truth that this is going to somehow slow things down or means Merrick Garland isn't taking this seriously or something like that. You do not bring in someone from The Hague, ask them to cease prosecuting war crimes, and make sure everybody knows about it that you don't have a case. If anything, seriously, legitimately, based on my education, my training, and my personal experience, this is a signal that things are escalating and the potential charges against Trump are very, very serious. The Department of Justice, therefore, has to take measures above and beyond their usual course of business to ensure that whatever action they take is unassailable as long as you are a good faith actor. They will, I expect, cross every T, dot every I. Their evidence will have evidence. Anything that may be remotely questionable in terms of providence will either be vetted more thoroughly than Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson or simply not be used. The DOJ has exactly one chance to get this right. Whether they decide to pursue charges or not, they will not be allowed to forget their decision. So this is the right thing to do. And it is a good thing to do. And I am glad that they did it. And I think that's our time today.
That is our time.
So we're going to wrap this one up. We will be back with you hopefully in a week. This one's also questionable with the holidays in there. We'll see. We'll be back as soon as we can, though. Until then, thank you so much for your support. It's something that I think we imply, but we don't say explicitly very often. So again, thank you so much for listening, for being here. And please take care of each other.
Oh, yeah.
Stop. 5.
Stop recording. Export.
Drop.
Drop it like it's hot.
Settle down, open up shop. Oh, wow. What you see, baby, this is perfecto. I'm on the night, on my hips don't lie. I'm starting to feel it right. So let's go. Oh, wait. Now that's a mashup that I need somebody to make. Maybe I will be that somebody.
Be that somebody. I
The
love freaking mashups. They're my favorite.
What are we calling this one? What's the name of this one?
Fireside Jeopardy.
Fireside. Oh, God. Jeopardy. Jeopardy. Jeopardy.
Jeopardy. Da, 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 da.
I wonder if the Jeopardy opening theme is I wonder if it's open for like fair use. I wonder if like you can use it or if it's copywritten.
Oh man. That'd be really cool. If not, surely somebody has recreated it closely enough that there is something passable that exists.
Yeah.
Okay. File. New. Get rid of that one. Bonus content. Are you still headed back Wednesday? Or do you think you have to stay longer?
Yep. No, I'll be back
Nice.
Wednesday, unless there's something tragic.
Solid.
Oh. Okay. Are you going to have the questions up to do this?
I am going to have the questions up.
How many questions are there?
There's a lot. We can just do as many as we want.
We'll be like, all right, we're going to go until we get 3 wrong.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then if that only takes a few seconds, then we'll go until we get 7 wrong or something like that, like
right. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Just because I know you've got to get going soon.
Yeah, I do.
7 o'clock? No, I'm going backwards. It's 2 o'clock your time. It's 1 o'clock.
It's 1.
I got there. 2 o'clock.
Yeah, forward is a lot easier than backwards. I struggle with backwards.
Okay, I'm recording.
I also am recording. Dun, dun, dun. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the kiln. First time in a while. No, balls.
No.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry. Starting over.
So eager. All right, 5 seconds of silence. Okay, the lag is bad. All right, we're gonna sync up in. Yeah, it's super bad. We're gonna sync up in 3, 2, 1. 3 seconds. The lag is 3 seconds.
Jeez. Unless you freeze, then it's a lot longer.
Yeah. Okay.
That's okay.
All right. I'm shutting down an internet page that I definitely don't need. Okay.
Okay.
Now you can.
Oh, now
you can
I
bring
can
us
do
in.
the
You
intro.
can bring us in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the kiln. First time in a while that we've recorded dedicated content for you, and we're really jazzed about it. The main episode this week was Fireside Jeopardy, and we had a fun time going through some current events topics. So for bonus content, I thought we should play some actual Jeopardy. On April 19, 2019, Jeopardy contestant James Holzhauer put on one of the greatest performances in Jeopardy history at the time, setting the record for the most money won in a single day. So, because James is my favorite Jeopardy contestant ever, we're going to go through a BuzzFeed quiz and see how many of the questions he answered that we can get right. As a note, he only missed 1 question that day. 1. And it cost him $1,200, which means it was a pretty hard question.
And he answered a lot more than that.
Yes.
We're not going to go through them all, I don't think. I think we'll go until we get like 3 to 5 wrong, depending on how bad we are at this.
Yes. Yeah. For the record, like James Holzhauer is as great as he is because he has a very particular buzzer strategy and a very particular gambling strategy, which is fascinating to learn about. but he answered a fuck ton of questions that day. We're not going to, but we are going to try.
I'm so sorry. What was his buzzer strategy? Did he like buzz like on the second to last word or something?
Yeah, essentially, he learned very quickly how long it takes the buzzer to respond and like at what cadence he needed to push the button to beat out his competitors. And so he was more likely to get called on. He knows just so many things, but he is not the smartest, like book knowledge Jeopardy champion that has ever been. He buzzed in more often and he answered his questions. And then when it came to daily doubles and Final Jeopardy, he was a sports gambler by profession. So he has a very particular gambling strategy that he uses to decide how much to increase when it comes to doubles and Final Jeopardy and stuff. So he's brilliant. He's a very brilliant game show player, I guess. Like he plays the game and also he's smart. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch him play then. As I remember when it happened, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, he's not playing Jeopardy right," and there were a lot of people that were mad at him about it.
Yes.
But then it was like, well, he won a shit ton of money, that's the whole point. So I don't know how that's playing it wrong. I think maybe you're just salty.
Exactly. And he's they moved him. He's moved to a different game show called The Chase, which is another trivia game show that I also absolutely adore. But you can very clearly see like the cognitive part of James Holzhauer on that show versus because he doesn't have to like compete to answer a question. Whereas on Jeopardy, you can very clearly see how much of his success was due to that competitive strategy versus just knowing the answers.
All right.
Even
so, he only got one question wrong on this little batch here. Ugh. Okay, let's go.
Okay, this was a $200 question.
All right, easy.
About beer. Okay.
I like beer.
I also like beer. In a 2019 Super Bowl ad, we learned about the corn syrup policy of Bud Light, Miller Lite, and this Colorado Light.
What is Coors Light?
Let's find out. Correct. Ding, 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 ding.
Cha. I'm not going to actually ask the question every time. We're not actually playing Jeopardy.
No. $400 question about beer.
Okay.
These bitter buds added for flavor belong to the Cannabisae family, making them a cousin of a marijuana. I'm going to say the answer to that is hops.
Super hops. Hoppita, 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 hoppita.
Hoppita, hoppita. Oh, we are correct. All right, I'm just going to pick random answers on some of these because I want to get through the beer questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hit us with some of the hard beer questions.
Oh, okay. The answer to the $1,000 beer question, which was the peak of that category. The first brewers may have been this Mesopotamian people circa 6000 BC. They even had a goddess of beer, Ninkasi.
Mesopotamian.
For the record, I would have known this one.
You would have known this one?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh boy.
Would you like the multiple choice answers?
Oh, there's a multiple choice answer one? Yeah.
Well, I mean, not on Jeopardy. You don't get multiple choice.
No, I know.
Within the BuzzFeed quiz, you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either the Harappans, the Cycladic, the Sumerians, or the Longshan.
Well, I was thinking the Sumerians, but only because it's the only Mesopotamian culture that I thought I knew of.
It is the most prominent one, and that is the correct answer.
Nailed it.
Yes.
Gilgamesh.
I was an antiquities major until my third year of college.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's
I was
pretty
taking
cool.
ancient Greek and all that fun stuff.
So you knew about the
Okay.
holy polies.
Yes.
I forget what what they actually the word for that hoplite. I don't know.
The
I'm
hoplites?
not Greek. I mean, yes, but there's like an actual like it to me every time I see it, it looks like holy poly, and I just cannot remember what it's actually called.
Oh,
Sorry. Next category.
you'll have to send it to me if you figure it out. Okay. This category is stout. There was totally a theme
Okay.
going on, at least in the
Lots of
first round. $800 question. In this documentary, Morgan Spurlock gained 5 pounds during a month-long diet of only McDonald's.
Supersize Me.
Correct.
That one, I remember when that happened, everybody's like, see, McDonald's isn't super bad for you. Or something like that. And I was just like, no, that's not what this shows at all.
Right. Oh, okay. So here's the $200 question for the stout category. Season 7 had this animated TV dad go up to 300 pounds. His body ends up sealing a leak at the nuclear power plant.
It's got to be The Simpsons.
It is. It's Homer Simpson.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, category logger. Logger.
It's a pun.
It's a pun. I love it when Jeopardy does that.
Okay.
Sharing its name with a Beatles tune. It's the title of Lars Mitting's book about chopping trees the Scandinavian way.
I'm a lumberjack.
I'll give you the multiple choices because even with them, I don't think I could get it. I'm not a Beatles fan.
Yeah, me either.
Norwegian wood. We can work it out. Don't let me down. Or if I fell. I mean, my gut says don't let me down. But I
I'll
think
choose.
that's actually a Chainsmokers song.
I'll choose We Can Work It Out.
Okay. Oh, it is Norwegian wood.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Cool.
Wasn't even a trick question.
Cool. Okay, this one's for me. $600, same category. One story about this companion of Paul Bunyan says it would take a day for crows to fly from one horn to the other. Do you know this one?
Yeah, I do know.
Yeah, okay. It's Babe, the Big Blue Ox.
So mythology in all of its forms, including American mythology or modern myths, it's very interesting to me. So I love the Pecos Bills and the Paul Bunyan stories. Even Johnny Appleseed to an extent is in that sort of American pseudo pantheon. Wow, I can't remember. John Henry, one of my favorites.
Yes, yeah.
That's a good one. There's a really, really good animated version of the John Henry story that was put out, I think it was by Disney.
Yeah,
it's just like a short film. Oh, so good.
It's beautiful. It's very, very pretty to watch. Right, category pale ale, PALEAIL for 200. Women of centuries ago were pale and ailing due to this based paint that they used to whiten their skin.
Pale and ailing due to man, I'm thinking of so many things. Lead, arsenic, like stinking radium.
Yeah.
What are the options?
Bleach, lemon, ammonia, and lead.
Lead is what I'm going with.
I feel like that's a solid answer. It could be lemon, but I think that lead is the right answer. Depends on how far back we're going, but yeah, no, it was lead.
Yeah. I've never heard of lemon-based paint or bleach-based paint.
Yeah.
I say we give
I
it
know
like
that, wouldn't go 1 or 2 more.
I was just gonna say I think we just go straight up to the highest point ones and see if we can answer those. Because otherwise we're just flexing on how much useless trivia we know to all of our patrons.
Listen, that's not useless. Okay, this was a daily double in the pale ale category. It just makes my heart happy that you knew the right sound to make for a daily double.
I've watched Jeopardy a lot. I'm not, I don't think, a super fan like you are.
Well, I'm also super fan of Wheel of Fortune. Listen, I watched a lot of game shows with
Wheel of
my
Fortune, yeah.
grandma when I was younger. So
Yep.
James wagered $1,000 on this daily double. The question is, malarial and iron deficiency are 2 types of this condition that can lead to paleness.
Anemia.
Correct. Okay. $1,000 question. Category is light. In First Man, an angry Janet Armstrong calls NASA a bunch of boys making models out of this light wood.
Balsa?
That is balsa wood.
Never seen First Man. I've heard it's incredible though.
I also have heard good things.
Any pop culture based trivia is actually one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm so bad at it because there's so much pop culture.
Yeah. Okay, this is a $1,200 question. Asian cities is the category. The only big city in a nation of small towns and villages, this Asian capital is located on the delta of the Chao Phraya River. It's probably Phraya.
Small towns and villages except for this one city?
The only big city in a nation of small towns and villages.
On a river, delta. What are our options?
Beijing, Bangkok, Hanoi, and Tokyo.
See, like, I was feeling Bangkok, but
I also would agree.
I mean, I guess it really depends on what you're. It's like I could see an argument for Tokyo, but I'm pretty sure there are other. No,
because there are other big cities in Japan.
Yeah, but also the names of the rivers don't sound Japanese. So.
I know. I'm actually looking at it and I'm like, well, it's a PHR, which means like there's a more likely scenario that it's Thai than it's Vietnamese.
I'm thinking Thai. Yeah.
We're such nerds. Yeah, it was Bangkok.
Yeah. The nerdiness wins out.
The nerdiness. All right. We're at 16 minutes, so I'll find 1 more, 2 more.
Nah, can you find the final Jeopardy question? We'll close it out with that.
Oh, that's a good one. It's literally only showing me questions as I click them.
Yeah, so you got to click. You probably have to click through the whole stinking thing to get to Final Jeopardy.
I do. Thanks, BuzzFeed. By the way, it just showed me one of the daily double questions on which James Holzhauer wagered $25,000.
Yeah, he wagered more than anybody else on the double Jeopardy stuff. That's like how he got so much stinking money.
Yes,
because he wagered enough that if he got it right, he would be just like astronomically in the lead. And if he got it wrong, he would still be in the lead or something like that, or able to regain the lead something pretty easily.
It very much was like Vegas style strategy.
Yeah.
And when you're really smart, it works.
I mean, but a lot of contestants have played like that now.
Mm-hmm.
Like he single-handedly changed the game because of his style.
He did. Not that this is turning into a whole Tower fangirl podcast, but
I mean, it could be.
it kind of is. Okay, it's Final Jeopardy.
Final
James
Jeopardy.
wagered $38,314.
Of course he did.
The category is physics terms. Ironically, it's a metaphor meaning a huge step forward, but this two-word process only occurs on a subatomic scale.
Oh, quantum leap.
Correct. You would have won Jeopardy, sir.
Unironically, one of my favorite shows growing up.
It was a good one.
It was so fun. Yeah. So that and Sliders, which was
Oh, well, yeah.
also really good.
Yeah.
But we don't have time to talk about that now. We have
We don't.
to let our patrons go. I hope y'all enjoyed Jeopardy, playing Jeopardy with us. We'll see what we can bring you next week. Anything you want to say before we go, Robin?
No, just thank you guys for hanging in there, sticking with us, and letting us have such a good time in this podcast. We appreciate your support more than we could ever tell you.
Absolutely true. Goodbye, everybody. Almost hung up on you.
The number of times I have to say out loud, don't hang up, don't hang up, don't hang up.
Yep. File. Say that. We can work it out. Season 3, session 14. Bonus Jeopardy!
Da, 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 da.
All right, 8:30. I gotta get dinner.
Yes.
I got to eat.
You got
So
to
hungry.
eat. Okay. Let's stop this.